Did you just get your PSAT score back, and are you wondering if you got a good score or not? Are you wondering if you need to prep for the SAT or if you should switch to the ACT? If so, in this video, I'm going to talk you guys through what a good PSAT score is. My name's Brooke. I've been coaching the SAT and the ACT for over a decade and a half. I've created 2 online courses to share all the secrets for how I've coached my students to perfect scores in these courses, so be sure to check them out at supertutortv.com. I've also written a couple of math books for the ACT math section. Be sure to join us by subscribing to our channel and by finding our mailing list. It's totally free, supertutortv.com/subscribe. We'll keep you in the know of new videos and stuff we've got going on our channel, sales, all that kind of good stuff. And you can check us out on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Cool, awesome. Let's get into PSAT scores. So the first thing I'm going to say is if you want to read instead of watch this, we have a blog that goes with this video. And the blog is awesome because it has this great data chart where we have compiled a comparison of the percentiles between the SAT, the ACT, and the PSAT. So you guys can take a look at how they correlate according to percentiles and can kind of see what an equivalent SAT and PSAT score are. Now, some of you may have looked at your PSAT score and thought, hey, doesn't this look like an SAT score? Aren't they on the same scale? And the College Board in some of its literature even says that the PSAT and the SAT are on the same scale. But clearly that can't completely be true when a PSAT is out of 1520 and the SAT is out of 1600. I'm going to first start off by talking about what a decent PSAT score is. A decent PSAT score reaches what the College Board calls the benchmark for college readiness. This benchmark is different depending on your grade level, as are the percentiles that I'm going to go through in this video. So if you're a 10th grader, where we want to see you is not as high as where we want to see you if you're an 11th grader, or if you were a senior randomly taking the PSAT, though that usually doesn't happen. In any case, let's talk benchmarks. Benchmarks are numbers the College Board uses that from the research are predictive of success in college. What that means is that you have a 75% chance or above of earning C or greater grades in related coursework. So what is the SAT benchmark? If you're an 11th grader, the benchmark for reading and writing is 460 points, and the benchmark for math is 510 points. If you're a 10th grader, the evidence-based reading and writing benchmark is 430 points, and the math benchmark is 480 points. So what does that translate to in terms of an SAT score? Well, as you can see for juniors, that was about a 970, right? But if you're going to take the SAT, I want to see something closer to a 1050. And that is the 50th percentile on the SAT. And that's kind of where you want to be for your basic, I want to go to college, I want to get a 4-year degree, and I'm planning to use my test score to help me do that. Now, the other thing that I'm going to say is it's a little bit hard to correlate these because the data that we have is from students who are taking a different exam. Remember that the PSAT is an exam that you usually just walk in and take as practice. Whereas the SAT, a lot of students prepare for because they know it actually counts, and that's the test that gets you into college. Now, it's true that the PSAT does count for a small percentage of students who are trying to qualify for national merit recognition, for commended student status, or a national merit finalist in the scholarship competition, or for the National Hispanic Recognition Program, et cetera, et cetera. But for the most part, people on the PSAT didn't prep that much, people on the SAT did. So as I go through kind of what SAT predicted scores are equivalent percentile-wise to your PSAT scores in this video, just be aware that you probably are going to have to do a little bit of prep work in order to maintain the level where you're at, in order to be in that same percentile at that quote-unquote equivalent SAT score, especially toward the top of the score ranges. With COVID-19 and test optional, what we're seeing is there's a lot of drop-off of test takers. And so we're not seeing as many people taking the test. And generally the people who are skipping out on the test are the people who aren't naturally born test takers. They're the people who are scoring lower. And so the people that remain tend to be the more competitive, higher scoring students. What that has done is it has crowded the top of the score scale for SAT test takers, and it's kind of switched out the numbers a little bit. We don't see the same intensity on the PSAT because, again, people aren't prepping for the PSAT so much. I mean, some people are, but not a lot. So we don't see that same effect on the PSAT, and thus, when I'm correlating these numbers and I'm telling you the percentile prediction for SAT, take it with a grain of salt. And I'm also going to give you guys some ranges because you might have to do some prep to get from here to here. But if you're 81st percentile on this, on the PSAT, being 81st percentile on the SAT is certainly an achievable goal. Just know it might not be automatic. You might have to put in some work. So let's go on to a good PSAT score. A good PSAT score is going to predict that you can score about a 1200 when you finally reach the SAT. A 1200 or 600 on each section or so is a classic good SAT score that can get you into a college you've heard of. This could be a top 250 ranked college, maybe in the 40th to 70th percentile in terms of admission rates. Big state schools. If you want me to name names, you should check out our What's a Good SAT Score video. I go through specific college names in that video if that's kind of what you're looking for. But what does a 1200 translate to in terms of PSAT if you're a junior or sophomore? That's what I'm going to talk to you about here. For SAT students, a 1200 is the 74th percentile for users of the SAT, so about the top quartile of test takers, and the 81st percentile if you took a nationally representative sample. And those are different percentiles because not every high school student in the United States takes the SAT. So users of the SAT are more likely to be college bound because they're taking the SAT. So it's a little bit more competitive, and this score is a lower percentile thus among users, but it's a higher percentile if we pooled nationally all the high school students that could take this exam. Okay, what does that amount to for juniors? If you're a junior, I want to see you probably scoring an 1140 or 1150 if you want to be on target to get a 1200 on the SAT. Now, the percentile matchup here is a little bit different because the national percentile, when we match up 81st percentile nationally on the SAT and 81st percentile nationally on the PSAT, we actually come up with an 1110. But as a tutor, I want you to be on the higher end. I want you to be closer to that 1200, which would be more like an 1140, 1150, which I think is actually a little bit more equivalent. If you're a sophomore, what I'm looking for is probably more around a 1090. That aligns with this national percentile of 81st percentile for sophomores. For users, it's a little bit lower. It's a 1050. So that score is a little bit lower than we saw in the past. I don't know if part of that is COVID-19 and distance learning and the impact that that's had on sort of some critical skills that might go into SAT that may have affected sophomores more than juniors. Not sure. But in any case, if you're at about a 1050, a 1090, you're in a good position to study up and get to that 1200 SAT score by the time you hit second semester of junior year. Okay. Now we're going to look at very good. So a very good PSAT score is in the 93rd percentile among users and in the 97th percentile nationally. This means that you're getting about a 1400 equivalent on the SAT. If you're a junior, that amounts to about a 1330 on your PSAT. So if you scored a 1330 on your PSAT, you can expect to, with a little bit of prep and practice, be able to pull a 1400. If you're a 10th grader, I want to see you at about a 1300 ideally, which is the national correlation. That's the 97th percentile for 10th graders on a national sample. Now, if you're a test taker in 10th grade and you have something in the 1200s, like around a 1220, that also aligns with the 93rd percentile. That's the 93rd percentile of PSAT 10th grade test takers is a 1220. But to me, that's somehow a little bit low seeming. And again, these numbers are kind of weird and funky this year because of a lot of COVID effects. But if you're in the 1200s, don't lose hope. You may still be able to get a 1400. Just make sure you study. Now let's talk about what's an excellent PSAT score. So for me, an excellent PSAT score is probably going to potentially qualify you for the National Merit Scholarship Competition or other awards on the exam. This is calculated using a formula that puts you in the top 1% of test takers in your state. So it varies according to state. So I'm going to give just like a ballpark figure, which would be approximately the 99th percentile or above. On the SAT, that would be about a 1520. On the PSAT, that's going to translate to a 1460 or above for juniors and a 1430 or above for sophomores. So if you're in those ranges, you're on track to be able and capable of getting a 1520 plus on the SAT. If you're looking to become a National Merit Scholarship finalist or semifinalist, you first need to qualify with your PSAT score. And I'm going to show you really quickly right now how do you calculate that selection index. So let's say you have a 1460 on the exam. Let's say of that 1460, you got a perfect on the reading and writing, you got a 760 out of 760, and you got a 700 out of 760 in the math. So that means what we're first going to do is divide each of these individual section scores by 10. I'm going to give you 70 in the math and I'm going to give you 76 in the reading and writing. Okay, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to double the reading and writing score. So this becomes times 2, I get 152, okay? So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 152 to 70. And that gives me a selection index. And that selection index here is going to be 222. So a selection index of 222 is very strong. It's basically at a level that in most states in the country would qualify you as a national merit semifinalist. And it's pretty easy to progress from a semifinalist to a finalist as long as you have good grades and you turn in all of your application materials on time. And you can confirm your PSAT score with what they call a confirmation SAT score. Typically what they make you do is take the SAT and get a score that's within a similar kind of range. It doesn't have to be quite as high as your PSAT, but you have to do well on it. And as long as that all checks out and they're like, oh yeah, it doesn't look like this was a fluke, cool, then you can progress to being a national merit finalist in most cases. So there you go. That's an excellent PSAT score. It's going to put you on track for a 1500 plus, kind of a 1520 or above score, if that's what you're scoring now, and get you in good shape to go to a great college. And again, if you want more of this data, check out our blog. We have more information. We're going to put as much of this data as we can pack into the blog that goes with this video. Remember, the link's in the description. Cool. After seeing all this, you might think, goodness, my PSAT score isn't that high. Uh-oh. Or, you know, Brooke, you told me that my percentile lined up with a score that's like over 100 points higher than my PSAT score, and the tests are only 80 points apart. How's that going to happen? If that's the case, what I encourage you to do is make sure that you set up a study plan so that you can reach your goals. Remember that a great SAT score isn't just a pathway to getting into colleges that you want to attend, but it's also a good tool you can use to qualify for scholarships or honors programs at universities, state universities, etc., etc. If you want to get a higher score, check out supertutortv.com, and above all, subscribe to our channel. We have totally free tips right here on YouTube, and every year I get emails from students who can't afford anything but our YouTube channel, and they still manage to pull off amazing score gains, and that could be you. So don't give up. You've got this. Your PSAT score does not define you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.